Welcome to Season 2 of Titanic Talk. This special opening episode was recorded in front of a live audience after a screening of Ship of Dreams Titanic Movie Diaries at the Mastic Beach Mini Indie Film Festival in Mastic Beach, New York. Titanic Talk with Nelson Aspin and Alexandra Boyd. Here we feature stories from the independent documentary Ship of Dreams Titanic Movie Diaries and everything else to do with the iconic ship. From James Cameron's epic groundbreaking movie to the history and legacy of Titanic herself. Join us and our special guests as we continue the 25th anniversary celebrations of Titanic. This is your first-class ticket to everything aboard the Ship of Dreams.
There's the...
Yeah, I think if she's on my lap, she'll stop shouting.
It's like if you hear a sound, like now you see where the sound is coming from, so it will cease to be.
It's not just a funny little growling snore from somewhere in the room.
We love it.
All right,
Shall we go?
We're ready to rock and roll.
All right. Well, big thank you to James Evans and Amy Gaipa for hosting us here at the Mastic Beach Film Festival. Congratulations on, I think, is this your 5th year, I believe? Yeah?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Amazing. 5 years is the leather anniversary in marriage.
Oh,
so
that's
maybe you
nice.
celebrate with a little leather later. And here we go with our Season 2 premiere of the Titanic Talk podcast, which was devised as a companion to Ship of Dreams Titanic Movie Diaries. And it's taken on this wonderful life of its own with this ever-growing, ever-expanding love fest of a family of Titaniacs. And every podcast, wherever you get your podcast, you can check out Titanic Talk. We did 24 episodes in Season 1. We've already recorded like the first half dozen of Season 2. So if you have any interest in anything having to do with the Titanic, the films, the books, the historical event, the food, the costumes, you name it, we have an episode for you. So the woman that has is sort of the matriarch of our Titanic family, I'd like to introduce my friend of, I think we figured out that it's been over 30 years, the very talented actor, writer, filmmaker, Alexandra Boyd. A round of applause for the lady that brought you that film.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nelson. Thank you. This is always such a joy. We're always thinking, what is going to happen? What are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about Titanic and everything to do with it. And the fact that you've just seen our film, I believe we've opened your film festival with our film, which is a huge honor. And as we're both here, we're remote to you, but Amy, tell us, for our podcast listeners, a little bit about the Mastic Beach Mini Indie Film Festival and how it came about and how you went through the pandemic and where it's going in the future.
Certainly. We are a scrappy little institution. We started off as a fundraiser for a film that James and I were going to be producing, and we were going to do it for 1 year. And then it became 2 years and 3 years and 4 years. And now we're a nonprofit and we're an institution in the community, or we're trying to be. And we're hoping that we can bring a little culture and a little fun to Mastic Beach.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
And create that community.
Yep. Community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think there's something that we all learned and that we all missed during the pandemic was coming into a dark space and watching one story being told and having that collective experience. I know I certainly do. And I still don't get to go as often as I should or would like to. But I know we watched Ship of Dreams Titanic Movie Diaries at its premiere in Los Angeles. And that was the first time I got to be in the room with people really experiencing it. And I have to assume that anybody sitting there this evening has some connection or love for the film as well as a love for your film festival. So we're really interested in some of the questions and some of the feelings and memories that it evoked by watching our memories and the fans' memories and so forth.
I was with Alexandra at that screening in Los Angeles at the premiere, and it was, we had seen it many times. Obviously, Alexandra lived it for so long. while she was making it, but to see it in the theater, and I actually sat in the aisle, on the floor of the aisle, because I wanted to be next to Alexandra and have that shared experience there. And I was so moved. And right before we started the Zoom call, we could see a bit of the screening, and it does. I always find myself surprised by how moved I am by it. It's not just a movie about the Titanic movie. It's a movie about fans. It's a movie about love for anything, whether that's the Titanic or another movie or just something. It's about the love of something,
of storytelling. It's a love of
Yeah.
storytelling. And this was a labor of love, putting it together, a documentary as extensive as this was, and the amount of interviews that you pulled together, and all of that. So it's just the love of film too. I mean, that's what it boils down to.
Yeah, that's where I
And
get choked
marvelous.
up too. It's like we just love the movies.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how you guys want to work this, since we can't see your audience there. I see James and Amy sitting at the table, but
Yep.
if you want to
Lucky
just
you.
call on people, or if you've got a microphone to
Yeah,
go
we
out in
have
the
a
audience.
microphone set up. If anybody wants to go to
Yeah.
the microphone to ask a question or has a comment or some feedback,
Please don't be
we'd love to
shy.
hear from you, please.
Once one person starts, everybody else will follow. So
Yeah.
let's
Right.
kick it off. Get up there.
Oh, look,
Come on,
couches,
Mark. We know you're a
chairs.
super
I love it.
fan.
Come on.
Come on, Mark. All right, this is Mark Bottolato.
Hi, guys. It's so nice to talk to you. Thank you so much for such a great film. It was so moving and touching. And pardon me bending down awkwardly to kind of get into this microphone. So,
You look like you're a very tall chap. That's why.
and the first thing that would come to mind is, obviously you dealt with a lot of different people who have all these different experiences and are connected to this film and this story through a common thread. But what is it, do you think, about the film Titanic in particular, and kind of the history of the Titanic wreckage, that touches so people and moves people so much?
Well, it's a brilliant question, because it's one that we ask over and over. Now we have the podcast, we get to ask it again. And certainly when I was writing out the script for a documentary, like why are we doing this? What are we searching for above and beyond anecdotes and personal stories of people who were there on set or the fans? And I'd say this over and over. I really thought I'd be able to find that out. I'd be able to put my finger on it. But I think it comes up. The romance of the story of the film is often the first touch point for people. And then, especially if they were very young, and then they go, but this was a true story. Oh my goodness, then I need to find out more about that. But then there's the other side of it, the people who are scientists and explorers who, have been down to the wreck and retrieved more stories and more history for us. But then, of course, as we all know, earlier this year, the Titan tragically killed 5 people.
Yeah.
Because there's this draw for something that you could go to a very morbid side of that same story and go, what were you thinking? What were you thinking? What they were thinking was they wanted to see for themselves this place where this extraordinary, tragic thing happened, because it was built up so much. And you look at the hubris that came along with James Cameron's Titanic, all that money, Rebecca touches on it, all that money, a film crew that had never handled something that big before, a ship's crew that had never sailed a ship that big before. The parallels are amazing, actually. And I think they were there all along without James Cameron really realizing it, or without the audience really realizing it. And 25 years later, we're going, okay, there's a connection there.
For me, I'm a history lover, but I'm compelled by drama. Like, who doesn't love a good drama? And if you think about every disaster movie that's ever been made, or any compelling story, whether it, there's always sort of the stereotypes. You've got one of every kind of person thrown into a catastrophe together, and that's become the model for disaster movies. But Titanic was the original disaster movie before there were movies. It was every walk of life was represented on that ship. Some were underrepresented, but it doesn't matter. Like there's someone on that ship with whom you can personally identify, and their story becomes your story when you're watching it. At least that's how it was for me.
Thank you both. That's a really interesting take. And honestly, I agree with you. And I wish you the best of luck with the film and hope many people get to see it. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Somebody else? Anyone else? Burning questions? Yes, Jeff. Thank you very much. Jeff Hopkins, a filmmaker himself, is approaching the mic.
Hello, how are you guys?
Hi, Jeff.
Good. Thank you. Thanks, Jeff.
First of all, great film. I really, honestly, I did not know much. I've known Amy for a long time, but I actually did not know all that much about the film or the filmmaking process behind it. So I thought it was really an intriguing sort of look inside of it. You spoke a lot about, I guess, James Cameron in particular, his attachment to the fidelity of his filmmaking and this attachment to the history. You yourself spoke about being a historian, I guess. Do you think it's an important milestone that we chose to dramatize it in a way to sort of further show other people that history? And do you find yourself to be a part of the furthering of that history yourself?
For me, I feel like it's two parts. It's like his passion and his interest in the history. Like, I'm going to retell this story. He even said it at one point, if we're not breaking new ground, there's no point doing it. You know, there've been many films prior to about Titanic, but he also wanted to tell it correctly. And I've said in a lot of my director statements, you know, many people now get their history from the movies. They don't get in a history class. They don't go to museums. They go to the movies. And we think if we see it in the movie and it's set in a historical period of time, that must be true. So puts a great deal of responsibility on the part of the filmmaker. For instance, if I'm making this film that you've just watched, my responsibility is to tell the stories of those actors and those fans as truthfully as I can. I don't want to, and of course documentarians do, they put their own spin, their own lens on a story, but this is so clear. This is so clear because those actors are reading their first person accounts that they wrote, they're not remembering them now. They wrote them right after they had those experiences, which is what a diary is, okay? So actually, a documentary, I feel like I have captured, and we captured in our diaries, a little bit of film history, a very important film history that actually nobody else has. I have 27 of those diaries. Not just the actors you saw. I have 27 actors, singular accounts of being on that film, on the biggest movie of all time. So it's
the attention to detail, I would point out that Amy Gaipa's bloomers were magnificently, almost perfectly recreated for the slide down the deck.
They were. Thank you, eBay. Thank you, eBay.
But what you say about Alexandra's right. You know, there have been several film versions and silver screen television, etc. And this won't be the last. I mean, it may be the most memorable for now, but we keep saying, gosh, there are so many tales to be told that it's just, Netflix will probably do the Titanic, the series, and you can, I mean, it's endless. You could follow the lives of every passenger over the course of their lives because of that one common denominator on that terrible night. But yeah, it's certainly compelling, and I can't believe we talk about this oftentimes, that James Cameron really wanted to do this movie just to use it as an excuse to go diving down to the wreck. And you often wonder, like, well, gosh, does he look back on it fondly? Does he remember it like one of the way you'd remember one of your children, or has he moved on? I don't know. For us and all the Titaniacs, it will always be special.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Can I add a follow-up?
Yes, absolutely.
So I guess in terms of your podcast, then, do you find that, I guess, is it part of your mission statement to further this talk about the actual history of the Titanic more than the filmmaking, or is it a bit
We're
of
everywhere. I encourage you to. We say it's all things related to the Ship of Dreams, and like I said, we did 24 episodes of our first season, and we're diving, and we'll probably get close to that many for the second season. But it's from the sublime to the ridiculous. Doctors, historians, psychologists. Yeah, we just did an interview with someone who has a series of Titanic cookbooks. So recreating food and how to throw a Titanic themed party. But we're all united by this common interest, and you can't love the movie and not be a little bit interested in the history, just as you can't love the history and not be a little bit interested in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you both very much. Great meeting you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from anybody?
This isn't really a question. I'm absolutely fascinated by the journals. And I know it went by really quickly in the beginning about how it came about, but could you say a lot more about how the journaling happened? Because I think that's absolutely incredible that somebody realizes that this event is something that you should keep a journal of, because down the road, you're going to want to know your feelings at that time. So could you talk some more about them?
Oh, Judy, you've just given me chills, actually. You've just given me chills because I know for one, Amy kept a journal while she was on set. You can tell because there's pages and pages and pages, and we had to cherry pick some of the best stories. Because, you know, a lot of diaries they can be day to day, so they can be quite mundane about day to day. But what happened was I knew Amy had kept a journal, I knew another actor had, and I was like, why don't we all write this down? Because I think and this was, again, after it won all the Oscars, after there was all this sort of Titanic mania going on. I was like, look at it this way. We're like the munchkins on The Wizard of Oz. Like, what was it like listening to Judy Garland sing, you know, Somewhere Over the Rainbow live on set, just being there? We don't have those accounts. We, I think, are those supporting actors, and we all had an extraordinary experience of auditioning or showing up on set first time, or being in that tank, or being on that poop deck, or working with Kate and Leo and James Cameron. Please write them down, and 27 people did. 27 actors did. Some of them have passed away now, so that we don't even get their oral accounts. But I have Elsa Raven, who played Mrs. Strauss, and I have Lou Poulter, just passed away. He played Mrs. Strauss. I have their first person accounts, and they're gone now. But we have them. So a year and a half ago, when I saw the 25-year anniversary. Oh, and P.S. we did try to get them published in a book, but back in the day you couldn't self-publish. There was no online publishing or anything. We had to try and convince a publisher to take it on, but it was 1998 and they were already on to the next thing. Nobody really cared. And every time I've had a new computer, these PDFs got transferred over and transferred over. And so, like I said, I saw the 25-year anniversary coming along. I'm now a filmmaker and a storyteller. I do less and less acting. I was like, just sit them down and have them read the diaries and then evoke the memories. You see how I was very clear. I didn't want people to rehearse or practice or remember. I wanted them to have those in the moment memories, and it's an extraordinary thing. And yes, I've been told many times I had great foresight, but I didn't know at the time. We just knew at the time we wanted to get it published. And I got it published in my own way. I've had them published in my own way because I'm now a filmmaker.
I have a question for Judy, if I may. Judy, do you? I'm going to take a guess and assume that you keep a journal. Do you write a diary?
Not as much as I would like to, but I'll tell you when I did, and it was very interesting. I have a couple of kids that I work with, and when 2020 started. Actually, it was 2019 in December, because we had a very important presidential election coming up. I got these two kids a journal, and I said, I don't know what's going to happen in 2020, but it's going to be a very, very interesting year. And here is a journal. You should keep a journal of this time of your life.
Wow.
And so I said that to them. And then I said, I think I'll keep a journal as well. And so I have a 3-volume set of journals of
Good.
2020, 21, and into 22.
Wow.
Which started out to be, we're going to have an interesting presidential election, and became a journal of COVID,
Yeah.
which got me through the terrible time when I thought I was going to die.
Oh.
And what a gift you gave those kids. I mean, they'll be lifelong journalists
I hope
themselves.
so.
And now, I mean, our journals are now our Instagram accounts, and it's really not the same. And I thought one of the things that was so moving was to see the actors, such as Amy, read their words from a quarter century ago when they were different people. I mean, Amy, you 25 years ago, you're not the same person you are now, but here you are reading the words, and that in itself. What's the thing that that whole cliche thing about what would you tell your younger self if you could go back? And by just reading that, you are going back to your younger self.
And
Thanks,
there's
Trudy.
a crazy immediacy, because the written word that you have, written down, it immediately transports you back to that moment in time. And it's different than if you recall something and you say it to someone at a, cocktail mixer or something like that. But when you actually read the words that you selected at that time, it was very powerful, and it was very emotional at times too, which really caught me off guard. I didn't think I was going to be that wrapped up, but I really was in the best way possible.
Well, Alexandra did a beautiful job of conveying that. I mean, props to Alexandra for getting that on film the way she did.
Yeah.
My favorite moment in Amy's diary is when she's like, the champagne is still unopened. She goes, it's still unopened. And then she goes, I'm going to save it. And then you go, yeah, it is. And then you go, I'm going to save it for my Oscar. Oh, well, there you go. There's that kind of spontaneity. You can't write that stuff.
No.
It writes itself. It writes itself.
Thank you. It's a fabulous film. I enjoyed it so much.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Judy.
you, Judy.
So, Alexandra, can you tell us how long it took you to put this together, this project?
Well, I would say 2 years.
Okay.
And that's quick. That's quick for a documentary.
It is.
But again, we had a time constraint with the film being re-released in cinemas. We didn't want to get swallowed up by that. The Titaniacs were very busy going back 9 and 10 times to the cinema to see that. So we did a little online release, which was small but sort of sneak peeky. And then by April and the anniversary, the 111th anniversary. So yeah, I started it. And this is something I want to say too. I live in the middle of nowhere. I live in 6 old growth rainforest on the Olympic Peninsula. And because of the beauty of Zoom, that it's so natural to us now, we were able to do all of our meetings on Zoom. Yes, I flew to New York to interview you and Nelson. Yes, I went down to Los Angeles, and I was back in London, so I was able to interview Peter and catch the kids, the Titanic kids at the Royal Albert. But everything else, my editor is in Devon in the UK. He stays up till 3 a.m, not for me, but he's a night owl. And we were able to film those things, edit it, as and when remember, we all have other jobs and so forth, and post-production. So yeah, that's a long answer, but 2 years, and probably quick for a documentary.
Yeah, for sure.
That is a quick turnaround.
Yeah.
One of the things that really struck me is the irony of hope from the film and the elegance of it, that I think we've been touching on it, that people latch onto it, but there was that moment in the film where the hope was brought up, and it brought both of you to tears, and you had chills again. I don't know, can you just talk a little bit about how your hope, Alexandra, evolved with it from, being on the production, and then the hope and inspiration to tell those stories, and has it evolved, and where do you imagine the hope going with this
Oh,
film?
yes. what I know is now, having had a number of real, what I call dyed in the wool Titaniacs. You know, we have the top of the pyramid with Ilka, Dale, and Zach. I was just lucky enough to connect with them on Instagram, and I now know demonstrate, and Brittany and Ethan as well, with their scene by scene. If you listen to her podcast, it's like a PhD in film school in that through that one film. Because her attention to the script and then what actually happens and the choice of shot. Okay, so we had this wonderful array of people who have really made a huge part of their life about the film. And so when people come along who are not just passing Titanic fans, or, oh, that's my favorite film, or I love that film, I collect autographs, people have said to me, thank you so much for making the film, because now I feel seen. I have been a closet Titanic fan for 25 years, and learning that there are people out there who are even more mental about it than I am kind of gives me a bit of, but also moving. Like LA Beatles, who has a podcast called Unsinkable, she sobbed and sobbed and sobbed because she said, I felt so seen and so heard, and I did not expect that. That is just wonderful. It's wonderful. I mean, it was enough of a gift to invite Ilka and Dale and Zach and Brittany to talk about why they love the film, but to see this ripple effect with people who truly, truly love that film is just so rewarding and so special.
How brilliant you captured Ilka and Dale meeting for the first time on screen, and now that, I mean, they're like best friends, and we're all that way, and then like our circle has included that, and now I'm friends with James and Amy. We're our web. This is what the internet, I think, was supposed to be.
Absolutely.
About. Yeah. I think this was really the mission statement for connecting people, and it's become this whole other monster. But yeah, it's amazing. Our shared love of a film brought us all together.
Yeah, and I have another quick story which we do tell in our podcast episode with Ilka and Dale, because this is so random and so important at the same time. Dale is a incredibly talented couturier wedding dress designer and dressmaker. And he was living in Durban. You hear his accent, he's South African. And my best friend from college, who we've known each other since we were 18, has the #1 wedding dress shop in Essex in the UK. They connected by Instagram, like, you make wedding dresses, you sell wedding dresses, you must be Instagram friends. And at one point, about 18 months ago, I think now, there was some terrible riots in Durban, and Dale was feared for his life. He did not want to live in South Africa anymore. His mum lives in the UK. He called me in a sort of moment of despair, I think, going, do you think Laura would give me a job if I moved to the UK? Could I work for Laura? I said, hang on a minute. Hung up with him, called Laura. Laura, I think I found the designer you've been talking about having in your shop for about 20 years. She went, Dale? I went, yes. She hung up, started the paperwork to get him work in the UK. He's been there a year since last March.
Wow. Incredible.
His whole life moved from a place of danger to home, basically, to be near his mum. Why? Because we're all connected by Titanic.
Wow.
Well, now think of the people that were on that ship that were trying to go to a new life. I mean, I mean, you can spin any moving story. You can put it on the Titanic. Yeah. You could have done that.
Yeah, amazing. It works on so many levels. And Alexandra, I just have one question, because you're a friend of the festival, and we had Widow's Walk that was here a few years ago. And I think you do a really fascinating job with the scores in your film. And I'm just curious, on a practical level, with the collaboration you have with composers, and the music was wonderful for Ship of Dreams. Was it different working with the composer on a narrative piece as opposed to a documentary? And then also underlying, the hope of what these actors were talking about in their diaries. I think it was scored very, very beautifully. So I'm just curious the difference of working on those two mediums, and then even just working on the score of this film?
It was different but similar. So Widow's Walk, I chose temp music, which usually they just sort of throw in action music or romantic music, or the editor will just sort of put some music under the dialogue but we found an amazing cellist called Zoe Keating, and she does that. She does the loop. When they lay down a track and then they lay another one on top, and they lay another one on top, and it expands. Anyway, beautiful cello music, and I knew I wanted cello. So for like 2 years, I listened to her amazing soundtrack, temp soundtrack, and then we went to her, and the story, as you remember, is about a woman who's lost her husband, and Zoe's husband had passed away, and she sort of laughed at us when we said, would you do the music for this film? Plus she was way too expensive. So what her music served really well for was, when I did find a composer, we found a cellist, and he knew how to match the tone of, so I was very clear with the temp track, with the temp music, to picture what I wanted to reproduce, but on an original level. So the same sort of applies to the documentary, in so much as you can't get away from James Horner's themes of Titanic, and the romance of it, and I knew I wanted a roll of drums as we went into the fly down through the staircase and everything. And that, I have to say, that entire score was written and played by Charlie Mackey, who is 24 years old, and she's still doing her master's in film score in London, and she's the daughter of another friend that I was at college with.
Oh, wonderful.
So,
and she wasn't born when the movie was made.
But she's like, James Horner is my favorite composer. Part of the reason I wanted to write music for film. So she slipped right into that job. And
so another layer of hope, another layer of hope and opportunity.
Yes.
That's wonderful. Any final questions while we have Alexandra and Nelson?
Get your voice on to the podcast, because it'll be uploaded on Monday. You want to hear yourself.
I have a question, Alexandra. If you could take one thing from the set, what would you have taken?
I know what the answer is.
Well, we might have to stop recording for this one.
No, because I honestly thought about stealing. If it had fit in my trunk, I would.
And I saw some people stealing. I was like, why didn't I steal more? No, I didn't.
Oh my gosh!
Anything. I was too afraid. I didn't know what the story was. But I saw people like swiping silver paper, putting
extras. Those extras. There was a lot when walkies. I wanted one of the menu holders. It has an upright star, like a little, and the menu goes on top. Desperately wanted to take one of those, but I didn't. I almost put a fork. A fork might fit in my glove.
Yes, right.
Well, I got your boarding ticket. She brought me the boarding ticket.
I know,
as a
that was
souvenir.
pretty cool. That was a really lovely reveal in the film. I love that.
And reversed,
all flopped. Well, Amy was there for that scene where everything was flopped, because she and I'm walking right behind her in that shot up the gang. I'm like, I am in that shot. I'm just out of frame.
Right. That's good. I love that. I wanted to take my corset. I even lobbied for it. I was like, please, could I have a corset? I do a lot of period plays. It fits me perfectly. You made it just to my specifications. They're like, we'll ask. And of course, I never got a response. So
your name is in there with Titanic spelt wrong. Misspelled. And it's somewhere in somebody's collection. Somebody has
know.
There's a woman, I never forgot her name. Her name is Tiara Hallman. Tiara like tiara. Tiara Hallman. She owns a shop in Burbank called It's a Wrap. And they get their hands on all the old studio clothes, and you can buy it at a price. But you might want to get in touch with Tiara Hallman at It's a Wrap. Tell her Nelson sent you.
Okay.
And just put out a call. Say, I'm looking for a Titanic corset. If one comes past you, call me.
Yeah.
It will have Amy's name in it. We want my oyster dress, the one that that Kate wears in her screen test.
Yes.
We wanted to go to the archive, but it was pandemic and they wouldn't let us go in or film. I just wanted to
Yep.
walk around with Zach or somebody and find it on the rack, and
Yeah.
all of it just melt in place.
Yeah.
It's another story that didn't quite get told this
Right.
time.
Well, with my corset, I literally had a panic attack. It was after one of those really long days, and they built this special like chair for you that you could stand, like you went up into it and it had arms, and you stood there, but it took some of the weight off of your body during that time. And but I remember going back to the dressing room, and the dresser wasn't coming quick enough. So I was just like, I can do this myself. And so I was just like trying to get the corset done. Well, it got knotted. And then I was literally sweating and almost crying because I was like, I've got to get out of this corset. I mean, it was, if I could have like taken a knife to it, I would have. And finally she came in the door and I was like, please. And she's like, oh my God. So she was immediately trying to undo me. But that was the only time that I felt super uncomfortable. But that day, I think it took its toll because of the hours and the stress and everything else. But I just needed that off of my body as soon as possible.
You're making me think of that deleted scene of Rose when she's trying to get the jump dress off and she's going, Trudy, Trudy.
Yes.
And she's pulling and the beads are going flying.
Yeah.
See them all going, pick up the beads.
Yes.
And she's running. And she goes running, to throw herself off the back of the ship. But
Yeah,
I you can see how, metaphorically and physically constrained by those stays would have been. Parallels are there for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It was quite the experience, I have to say. All right. Well, anything else? Any last thoughts or words or parting sentiments?
I loved this so much. Such great questions.
As did we.
Yes.
So we thank you so much for bringing your film to our film festival, and you've got a lot of great response during it. People were engaged and really thoroughly enjoyed it.
And watch out for Titanic Talk, the podcast.
Definitely.
If you want more information,
one-
more backstories from actors and stuff, it's all there in season 1 and more to come in season 2.
So Nelson, what else is on the horizon for you? And Alexandra, what else is on the horizon for you?
Well, this podcast was really just, as I said at the top, was a companion piece to promoting the film, and it really has taken on a life of its own. In fact, we've got to figure it out. What we'd like to sort of take it on the road, and now that we have this extended Titanic family, to be able to say, hey, who wants to go to the Titanic Museum in Belfast? And Dale, bring some of your miniatures. Cool. Zach, bring some of your treasures, and create a traveling exhibition where we can sit and engage with Titanic enthusiasts in Titanic-related places, whether that's the Titanic Trail in Cove, Ireland, or the museum in Belfast, or Pigeon Forge, where there's a Titanic museum. There's one in every city now has a Titanic museum. So any place where there are Titaniacs, that's something to take on the road. And then in a completely unrelated matter, I have a new novel coming out next month called Dancing Between the Raindrops.
Nice.
Steamy Jackie Collins-esque look back at the 1980s in New York City, which is exactly when I met Miss Alexandra Boyd. So all sorts of naughtiness goes on, and you find all sorts of ways to describe naughty things with new words. So that'll be coming out next month.
Congratulations on that.
You have a well-thumbed thesaurus.
Yes. And maybe Alexandra will want to make a film of it. You never know.
Yes, well, that's certainly. Right now, I'm writing. I'm not my own project, but a producer has asked me to rewrite a script that has a great premise, but he wanted some changes made. So, but it's a full write. I've been doing that, so I've sort of buried myself in this sci-fi creature feature, which could not be
nice.
I know, very, very, very.
What a departure.
Yeah.
A departure. But you know what, Amy? And I wonder if you understand this. Going from being an actress to a writer is actually really even easier, because as an actor, you're imagining being somebody you're not. When you're writing, you're imagining situations and characters that you never could be. But you're using the same tools to imagine dialogue or action or human interaction or dramatic situations. So people look at me and they're like, I've written this gangster pilot for the UK set in 1960s Soho, and everyone's effing and blinding and murdering people with hammers and doing all these dreadful, and then they meet me and they're like, oh, I didn't expect that, and I'm like, it's my mind is using the same muscles and skills that it was using as an actor. Just now I don't have to learn the lines and I don't have to leave my house, which I really like.
Perfect. I'm all for that. All right. Well, have a good evening and thank you for joining us here. We really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Have a
Yes.
good evening.
Yes,
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye-bye.
Alexandra and Nelson, thank you very
See
much.
you soon.
And he's the pug skin.
One more look at the pug.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review. And if you'd like to hear more podcasts like this, hit the subscribe button. For information on where you can see Ship of Dreams, Titanic Movie Diaries, go to shipofdreamsfilm.com. Titanic Talk is a production of Ship of Dreams Film Limited. To celebrate Season 2 of Titanic Talk, we've launched a line of Titanic Talk merch. A cap, a mug, a tote, a t-shirt or a hoodie. You'll be sure to find a unique gift for the Titaniac in your life. Look for the link in the notes and on Instagram, or go to bit.ly/Titanic Talk Shop.